500 years of football expertise and the future of the game, powered by Sumer Sports, come together. Breaking down the big board with the guys that were in the room. Today's panel includes Sumer Sports senior offensive line evaluator, former NFL player, scout, and director of player personnel for the 49ers, Joel Patten. Also joining us is Mike Mayock, who played safety for the New York Giants, as well as served as the former GM of the Oakland Raiders. And we're bringing it all together with the most sophisticated sports technology ever engineered. This is the Evaluation Offensive Line. You won't see their highlights on the nightly reels. No touchdowns, no celebrations. Just 5 bulls fighting in a phone booth every single play. Offensive linemen are the quiet guardians of the game, the ones who protect, who anchor, who absorb the violence so everyone else can shine. Scouts aren't just looking for size. They're looking for balance, strength, patience, and a mean streak kept just barely under control. Footwork of a dancer, power of a bulldozer, mind of a chess player, and the heart of a bouncer at last call. It's dirty work, it's thankless work, and without it, the whole offense collapses. Welcome to the Evaluation. I'm your host, Ioane, and today we're talking offensive linemen. Gentlemen, how we feeling?
Feeling great.
Oh, lineman, this is right up.
He's ready for this one.
We're talking big skill right here.
Yes, sir. Well, Joel Patten, will you start us off?
Well, this young man is an impressive big body guy. It's Francis Mauigoa from Miami. He's 6'6", and in the media guide, he's listed at 315, but he's 330 pounds. Moves like he's 315, though, which is pretty impressive. Interesting story, born in America, Samoa. Progressed through California in high school and IMG. And he's been a 3-year starter at Miami since he walked on the field. He's a combination of power, coming off the ball as a run blocker, uses that size really well. He's got some strength in his hands to get pop and get movement. Does a really nice job of keeping his pads down. And I like his agility and balance on the move. Really, the biggest concern I have with him is consistency. You know, he's a young player, only 3 years. He started all 3 of those years, not even 21 years old yet. So I think with an NFL offseason, training camp, I think this guy's got a chance to be a really solid starter and early in his career.
Thank you. Mike, who's your first player eval?
I got Kadyn Proctor from the University of Alabama, another 3-year guy. Now, this kid is 6'7", 366. So visually, I want you to think Trent Brown, Mekhi Becton. Okay, that kind of length, that kind of bulk. And even though one of them was a 7th-round pick and one of them was a 1st-round pick, they both have a similar skill set. They can move for big fellas. Okay, so he was a 5-star. Coming out of high school, what a surprise. He played hoops and track. Loved the hoops for his feet, loved the track for offensive and defensive linemen because it develops lower core strength, torque, and body control. He was a high level in both. Traits, physically, his length, his size, his bulk, they're all high level. He was number 2 on Bruce Feldman's freak list.
Yep.
And you know, we tend to laugh about that, but it's a real deal. And what does that tell you? It tells you he's probably gonna blow up at the combine. Now, I think he might shed a few pounds for the combine just to test better, but even if he rolls in at 350 and runs, you know, 4.89, people are gonna fall over. And I think he's gonna be the first tackle taken in the draft.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now, it's time to go to our senior Sumer Sports data analyst and football integration lead for our first deep dive, Sam Bruchhaus.
Look, we were both defensive players. We hated offensive linemen. We didn't want them around us. We wanted them going anywhere but around us, right? So it's fun to break these guys down because that's what we had to spend our time doing. And when it comes to the draft, there's some evidence that indicates that the combine is a little undervalued for offensive linemen. You want to go after athletic offensive linemen, Kadyn Proctor and Mauigoa are the 2 for you. You look at a guy who has a certified top characteristic, and that is Francis Mauigoa in the pass game in particular, when dealing with counter moves according to the AI, which we chart every single play, every single 10th of a second. We like to see if these guys make inside, outside moves through the pass rush. Mauigoa has done a good job at neutralizing those at Miami. Mauigoa has those blue chip traits. We want to see those 10, 9s, and 8s. And Kadyn Proctor, as Mike said, a little inconsistent, more in the quality range, particularly in his pass block win rate. It's a good thing for a prospect, and it's certainly good when you have those measurables, but it is definitely something to note.
Appreciate you, Sam. Joel, who's your second player you want to evaluate?
Yes, this is Monroe Freeling out of Georgia. This is an impressive-looking young man. He's 6'7", 315 pounds. And the thing that screams at me watching this guy is he's another true three-year player that was not a three-year starter. That was a guy that only started a handful of games last year, but he did so at the end of the year, and due to injuries, had to step in and play all the way through the bowl game. And I think watching him this year, he wasn't a household name coming into the season. There were some people that weren't quite aware of him, but what you looked at on tape was this big frame, long, athletic, and very, very smart. This guy is technically sound, which is impressive for a third-year guy. And he's really not explosive and powerful, as you will, as a run blocker, but he stays down with his pads. He uses really good leverage and hips to get into his man, smart angles. That shows up on combination blocks. Another kid that's a deceptive athlete. He runs really well for 6'7". And you see that out in space with him as well. And it shows up in pass protection. I talked a lot about some of the angles that he uses takes away speed off the edge. The fact that he's really quick with his eyes to get back into the stunt game and see things developed, whether it's a late blitz or something in slide. The biggest thing for him is core strength. He really needs for anchor, for power on contact in the run game. He's had a little bit of durability with the shoulder, and that'll help, I think, that as well. But he's an impressive guy that I think he walks in the league and starts, and you'll like him, but I think you'll love him by the end of his first year at left tackle.
Mike, who you got next?
Spencer Fano, University of Utah, another third-year guy, listed at 6'6", 308, 4 uncles, played in the NFL. DNA never lies. Now, he's had 35 starts in 3 years at Utah. The first 11 on the left side, the last 24 on the right. Even though they've had him as a right tackle the last 2 years, I call him a point-of-attack player because they also go unbalanced.
Yeah.
Right? And when they go unbalanced, he's on the left side, and the ball's always going where he is. I did percentages. I looked at the run rate towards him. Sam will probably chime in. It's off the charts. Easy mover. The zone teams are going to love this guy. Like when he's in a 2-point stance and they're running outside zone or anything on the perimeter, he looks like a tight end.
Yeah.
Here is the alert. And I think every coach in the league is going to watch the Texas Tech tape, okay, for this guy. Texas Tech has got 2 of the baddest dudes on the college planet playing defensive end. So Utah played him, and this poor kid, Spencer Fano, was just overwhelmed early. He was on his heels. They were running around him. They were taking him up the field and coming underneath him. This is an important tape for the kid because some teams might look at him and say, nuh-uh. Look what he did against NFL talent.
Right.
Not good. And he's going to go in the first round.
Yeah.
And all the fans are going to wonder why he's getting beat early.
Right.
And you just got to be patient. Let the kid grow up a little bit into his body and his body of work.
Thank you, gentlemen. Sam, I hope you're not afraid of the water because we need another deep dive.
Hey, look, we got some deep dives coming already from Mike and Joel, but I am over here when Mike is talking about Spencer Fano and he's referencing me. I'm shaking my hands because the I meets the AI with Spencer Fano. Point of attack player, 3 words. That is what this guy is. Mike mentioned the pools and the traps. One of the top players in our historicals in the draft. Point of attack player, we mentioned that with Proctor and with Mauigoa about, maybe it's a scheme thing, maybe they're not able to do it. Certified for him, he is an impact player. He is an 8 in that metric. There is yards before contact when this guy is involved and he's doing well. Let's talk about Freeling a little bit. A word that Joel said that really interested me was, he's maybe not gonna win extremely fast, but those angles, that shows up really highly with him. He is able to sustain blocks quite long using his size and frame, even though he may not win against some of those more quick twitch defenders. That also shows up against the stunts when he's able to see it play out and play. He is a quality 7 player in those stunts, according to the analytics, and he's a blue chip player when it comes to sustaining. That being said, we do have a little bit concerns of his ability to really manage those quick twitch players in the run game, but overall, these are 2 extremely talented players.
Thank you, Sam. Joel, we got one more final eval.
I do, and they keep getting bigger. This is Isaiah World from Oregon. He's 6'8", listed at 318 pounds, but I think by the end of the season he was heavier than that. This is a kid that started his career at Nevada Reno under-recruited, was more a basketball player in high school. Offered to go to Reno and kind of developed himself as a player, redshirted early, and then became a starter at both right and left tackle, and ultimately became one of the highest sought-after tackles in the transfer portal last year and ended up at Oregon. Certainly a big transition from level of play in terms of Reno to Oregon, and I think you see that on his film. But when he comes off the ball, he's got power and he's got the ability to stay down in that frame, which is hard for a 6'8" kid. Sometimes that's too tall. Really good at playing with length. His arms are going to be what you want arm length-wise. He does a really good job of clamping and controlling his people. And he, too, is going to run really well. That basketball background shows up. Good enough in space from an agility standpoint, but really the biggest concern with him is overall awareness. You know, he's kind of a late reactor sometimes when he does get to the second level, and it'll show up as well some in the pass game. Initial kick set is great. This guy bends well, good at matching speed off the edge. He was surprised, especially early on, with the speed that he was facing in Oregon and the Big Ten versus at Reno. And then he got hurt late in the last game. I think a lot of this was an off-season of coaching, time on the job again with an NFL system, more of a developmental element to him, but I think this guy is going to be a solid starter that is similar to Freeling. At the end of the season, I think you're going to get a really good player. He can play either tackle, probably stick with him at right initially, just from a safety standpoint, but I think he'll be able to play and start at either tackle spot.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mike, who you got next?
I got another Bama guy, Parker Brailsford, 6'2", 290. Transfer from Washington. 1-year starter at Washington, 2-year starter at Bama, 42 overall starts, 40 of them at center, 2 at guard. Now, let's not confuse him with a guard. He's not. I'm evaluating him as a center only. He can get you out of a game at guard, but he is not a guard. What stands out on tape when you put it in right away? Wow. Elite quickness. Yeah. This cat can snap and go. And when I'm talking about quickness, I'm not just talking about feet. His hand quickness is snap and get your hands on a big nose tackle that's a 0 right on your head. If you're late with hands, you're going to get mauled. This kid's foot quickness and hand quickness, I think, are outstanding. High-level stuff. He's a natural bender. Run game. This kid can run all day. He'll run in the fourth quarter just as fast as he did in the first quarter. Outside zone, perimeter run, screen game, I'm all in. He can combo, climb, and fit at the second level as well as anybody. Really good angle blocker. You know, he can block down, he can block out, and again, it's leverage and fit. The only issue, like all undersized centers, is going to be big body on your head.
Yep.
How do you handle it both in the run game and the pass game? So, pass game, what's he do? He mirrors and bends. You know, he can mirror anybody. I don't care how quick they are. He mirrors, he bends, gets his hands on, and he steers. Now, we talked about he's going to struggle against bigs. That's okay. I thought he got stronger this year compared to the tape at Washington and then the first year at Bama. He's a stronger looking kid. He's bigger. He was 278 at Washington.
Yeah.
It's 290 now, okay? I think, so when you look at the draft, what do I project? I see a quality starter. I think he's going on day 2, which is the 2nd or 3rd round. And let's keep in mind with quality centers, we haven't had a first-round center since 2022 with Tyler Linderbaum, so they're rare.
Gentlemen, thank you. Sam, take it away.
So let's start off with World. I think this is a place where the scouting evaluation adds a lot of context because in terms of the analytics, there wasn't a ton of standout stuff in the positive or negative direction. And so the insight that this dude was a guy who transferred up and then grew as the season went on really adds a lot of insight to maybe why it's kind of averaging out in terms of his analytical prospect grades because he did well towards the end of the season, maybe struggled a little bit with the transformation at the beginning of the season. One thing I will note that mirrors what Joel just said is we also, in our analytics, did not necessarily love what we saw when he was blocking at the second level. Let's move on to Brailsford because quickness, name of the game. This is something that AI can analyze extremely well because we're looking at every 10th of a second. And we're looking at the probability of a run stop, the probability of a hurry. And this guy, Brailsford, can shut run stuffs down in a second. Extremely quick. And another great item, which they also highlighted, if guys aren't going to try to get the hands off of him, he's going to kill him. In terms of bull rushes, just guys trying to bowl over him, he gets the hands on quick, and that shows up in the analytics as well. We really liked his growth this year against bull rushes.
Thank you, Sam. There is still a ton of talent left on the board, so let's go to Sumer Sports senior analyst Sean Syed for some rapid-fire evaluations.
It's lightning round time. Caleb Lomu is a lean offensive tackle with potential upside. He has effective hands, can move in space, and has a solid kick set. Blake Miller is an experienced, efficient right tackle. He uses his hands and leverage well initially and will look to improve his pad level and power at the next level. Gennings Dunker is a physical offensive lineman with solid power. He has a thick build and can use his upper body strength to get movement. Olaivavega Ioane is a massive guard with dominant run-blocking presence. He has heavy hands, a powerful leg drive, and a true anchor. Emmanuel Pregnon is a rangy athletic guard. He shows the ability to mirror defenders, has an effective anchor against power rushes, and can cover ground on zone runs. Max Iheanachor is late to football and is still improving his technique. He is a raw prospect, but has shown some good footwork on film.
Earlier, I sat down with Sumer Sports CEO Larissa Horton. Here's our next segment, the SAI Check, powered by Sumer Sports. Larissa, fans spend so much time talking about running backs, talking about wide receivers, but as a former defensive lineman, I want to know how Sumer AI addresses linemen.
So linemen is this whole story that unfortunately doesn't get all the attention that they deserve. Because you're talking about a running back and what a running back can do. It turns out it's the people around them that really helps them do what they can do.
Right, and it's about not just being able to get that initial block, but sustaining your block as well.
Yeah, in this particular case, we're looking at Dickerson, and we looked at what's expected yards for this play. And at the beginning, it was pretty low, it was about 4. But as he went and blocked and held that block for up to nearly 4 seconds, the expected yards just kept going up. And really, it's because he's creating more space for his teammate to be that much more successful.
So we know Saquon's incredible, but we also have to pay tribute to Landon Dickerson as well.
Yeah, Saquon is incredible, but we get asked all the time, why was Saquon not like this on his other team? And it's because of all the people around him that changed the environment to really allow him to show what he can achieve and then build that momentum to do really, really great things.
I love that Sumer AI is giving love to the big boys. The big boys need that love. They deserve it.
They deserve so much more than just the love. They deserve the attention, the credit, and all of the gains because these particular plays would not be possible if it wasn't for them. I mean, this is what really changes our appreciation for those folks that are on the field.
And I love that if more of our fans are able to use Sumer AI to understand the importance of the offensive line, I really think that will change the way that people perceive the game when they're watching.
Yeah, it'll change not just the appreciation for that, but also the overall orchestration of people working together to get to that gain. So it's not only the person with the ball that's helping make this happen.
Right, it's really about 5 offensive linemen being on the same page.
Yep, all the time.
Our next guest was invited to the Pro Bowl in each of his first 10 NFL seasons. And are you ready for this? He never missed a single play until his final season in the league. He is widely regarded as one of the best linemen to ever play the game. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Joe Thomas. Joe, welcome to the evaluation.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Joe, you earned unanimous All-American honors while at Wisconsin. In your opinion, what separates an elite college offensive lineman from the rest of the pack?
Well, I think it all starts with balance, right? You've got to have great feet to be able to use all that weight room strength that you spend so much time in the offseason handling. And I think if you can have the feet and the balance to be able to move and to mirror and to react to what your defensive lineman does, that's going to give you the opportunity to have success on any given play. And then, of course, from there, it's all those things like technique. It's all about toughness, finish, all the things that you spend so much time on the practice field. But it all starts at the ground level with your feet.
And are great feet something you can train, or is that just innate athletic ability?
Well, I think a lot of it's innate athletic ability, and that's why the greats from Iowa and Wisconsin back in the day, they always were looking for oversized tight ends to be able to shift down to the offensive line to turn into tackles, because you got to be a basketball player with your feet to be able to play tackle at college, in the NCAA, or even if you want to move on to the NFL, you got to be even one step above athletically than where you were when you were a college player, maybe just getting by with some toughness, some strength, some good good technique, but you got to be able to match up with guys like Myles Garrett and TJ Watt athletically to be able to block them in space. And it all starts with the great athleticism that God gave you, and mom and dad, you can thank them, because without them, you can train it a little bit, but really it's genetic driven to be able to have that quick twitch reflex in your body, in those legs.
Joe, if you were a scout looking at college offensive linemen, is there one trait or one thing on tape that would really jump out at you?
It's interesting when I look at offensive linemen, and I coached over in Munich in the European League of Football a couple years ago, and we were doing the evaluation process on guys that we were hoping to bring in. And I was always looking, of course, at your balance, right? Your hands. You need to see the strength and athleticism that they show on the field, but I'm always looking at their ankles and their hips. The mobility, the flexibility that you have there allows you to create the force from the ground up and to utilize all that athleticism, all that weight room strength that you have to get into those positions biomechanically that give you an advantage over your opponent.
Joe, in your opinion, what is the hardest thing jumping from college to the league? What, for offensive linemen, is usually the biggest difficulty in making that transition?
I think it's really twofold. One, you're going against All-Americans week in and week out when you're in the NFL. In college, yeah, you might play a couple guys a year that you really got to elevate your game and be ready for those big moments and those big matchups. But in the NFL, when you get the scouting report on a Monday, every single one of those guys is going to be a first-round draft choice, was an All-American from whatever school that they came from. So the level of competition is just so much higher at the NFL level, where you can't have a bad play or a bad game because it's going to be over real fast for you as far as your career goes. Whereas in college, you only have to be at your best a few games a year to be able to be one of the best in college football. And I think from there, then you look at the schemes. What teams are going to throw at you in the NFL is so much more vast than what you saw in college, specifically the matchups you're going to get. If you're an offensive tackle and you're maybe a big guy and you struggle in space and you can't move quite as much, well, you may think you're going to have one defensive end lined up against you, but the defense is going to pick and choose the matchup that they like the best. You don't get to pick that on offense because you're a left tackle. You line up in the same spot. You can't move before the snap. But on defense, they can decide, hey, Myles Garrett's a good matchup versus this guy because his speed or his power matches up well, and this guy's undersized on offense, or vice versa. Hey, maybe we want to put somebody over there who's a little bit faster because this guy on offense, he's an offensive tackle that's big and he's tough and he's strong, but he doesn't move so well. So you've got to have a full tool belt of the different tools that you got to have to be able to handle a matchup with maybe a guy who's like a Reggie White, 6'6", 300 pounds, or a guy who's more like a Von Miller, who's a small, fast, quick twitch type guy. And you're going to see all those guys throughout the course of a season, and maybe even sometimes throughout the course of a game. And communication is so important as an offensive lineman because you guys are 5 people that are working together as one. And so the combination blocks that you have, the people you're responsible for, it could change at any moment, even within the same given play. And so you've got to be able to see everything together. You've got to see the same picture without having to always have the benefit of talking to each other, because you're playing in loud stadiums. There's 80,000 people screaming. And sometimes it's as much as just pointing your finger in a certain direction and knowing that, hey, we've got years of practice next to each other, and he knows we're looking for the same thing as we walk out of that huddle. And so you know that every team, they're looking to have a great pass rusher over the top of you, and you better be ready every single week. So for me, I knew in the AFC North, I was going to get Terrell Suggs, James Harrison, and then somebody from Cincinnati who was pretty good throughout the course of my career amongst a long list of guys who lined up over the top of me, starting when I was a rookie with Justin Smith, a guy who was the first time that I think a defensive player had ever won first team All-Pro at 2 different positions in the same season, when he ended up going to San Francisco, winning first team All-Pro at defensive end and defensive tackle. So those guys, they kept me up plenty at night. And then when you start getting out of your own division, Dwight Freeney, guy that just got into the Hall of Fame, basically packaged what a spin move looks like to make it one of the most dominant pass rush moves of all time. DeMarcus Ware, another Hall of Famer, he was in my Hall of Fame class, a guy with an unbelievable get off on the ball, incredibly powerful, strong hands. He had the hands of like a 100-year bricklayer, the way you just put those things on you and shock you and throw you back into the quarterback. And when he was standing straight up, he could tie his shoes. So the guy had the longest arms, I think, recorded in history for a man that was 6'4", 4 inches tall. So you're just dealing with a lot of problems when you're an NFL tackle, and you better be ready to bring your lunch pail against any of those guys. And I guarantee I didn't sleep a wink the night before playing any of them.
So was there an I made it moment or a moment where you realized I belong in this league?
It's funny because I talked to a lot of guys, even in my own Hall of Fame class, Zach Thomas, DeMarcus Ware, and we talked a lot about imposter syndrome. And I think that was one of the things that always drove us to be better, is that we always felt that no matter what accolades we had or, Pro Bowls, all pros, all the flowers that you're getting from the local media, your family and friends, like we always felt that at some moment they were going to find out that was all phony and we were really not any good at football. We were no good. We were going to get tossed off the team. And so it just drove us to be great at any given moment. And we had this fear, I think, that built up inside of us that we can't have one bad play because that's going to be the play that people are going to finally realize that we're not very good anymore. And so I think that it was a huge driving factor throughout my entire career. And even later in my career, years 8, 9, 10, then it became like, oh no, I feel like the injuries are piling up. I'm struggling to get the same level of training because of the injuries and the rehab process and stuff. So like, I got to be on my game so that people don't realize that I'm slipping. I'm getting older, right? I'm getting slower. I can't do this anymore. And so there was really never a time in my career I can remember saying like, oh yeah, I've made it. I've arrived. I finally have put out that film that I'm really proud of, that people have irrefutable evidence that I can do this thing.
Love it. You've spent a lot of time with the old school coaches, but AI and analytics, I think, are really changing the game. Can you talk about that stigma and the adoption in the NFL? If there are more coaches, more execs who understand the importance and the use of AI and analytics when breaking down the game?
We always said, like, if you can't measure it, you can't get better at it. But if you can measure it, like, there's a way that we can improve at those things. And so I think the data collection is something that's huge throughout the NFL. Like, we would always wear, towards the end of my career, those GPS monitors so that the team was able to tell like where you were on the field in relation to everybody else, how fast you were moving, your acceleration. And then as they're collecting all that data, then you can start figuring out like, okay, is there any patterns that are showing up within this data that we can learn something from? What are the pieces we need? Where are the missing links to become this great football team that we want to put together?
And Joe, if you could go back and give yourself some advice your rookie year, what would that be?
Good question. I would say that from day one, eat better, make sure that you spend the money on your body that you would later on in your career.
And speaking of great food, you've obviously slimmed down since your playing days, but you're still a very large man. What kind of food do you use to fuel yourself, and what did you use during your playing days?
Yeah, so I was eating probably 10,000 calories a day during my playing days, and it's difficult to eat really clean when you're eating that amount of calories to make sure that you're refueling and you're giving yourself the energy you need to go out for, at the time, 2-3 hour practices every single day during training camp. But when I decided to retire, I really undertook a big time wellness journey and really dove deep into how food is medicine and making sure that my body is getting exactly what it needs. And a lot of that was raising a bunch of food for myself with the big garden that we have every year. We started raising cattle on my farm, so I knew exactly what my animals were being fed and what the finished product, the beef, was going to be. And it's been a real passion project and giving me real purpose every single day that I wake up now and I get out on the farm, or I'm out there trying to feed people some really, really super high quality fuel so that they can feel amazing just like I do.
I love that. Well, Joe, I can't thank you enough for joining us here on The Evaluation. Thank you for your insight and thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
A popular talking point amongst fans is it's hard to find elite offensive tackles. Let's find out why. This is strange, but true.
43. That's the number of offensive tackles drafted in the first round in the last 10 years. It is the most frequently drafted position in that round in that time. And it's not because you can't find tackles later. It's because if you need a tackle, you need one bad. There's a scarcity at this position that honestly makes sense if you think about it. You need to be tall. You need to be big. You need to be strong. You need to be athletic. Humans that check all of those boxes are pretty hard to find. And every team needs 2. So we need every year 64 hyper-athletic giants to start for NFL teams. And according to our Sumer scores, there are about 15 a year that are really good. That leaves a lot of starters that are good enough, some that aren't good enough, and then the players who weren't good enough to start. This is why when a good tackle gets hurt, the trickle down is massive. And when 2 get hurt, people start using your team name as a verb. Teams go from having one of the best players at the position to a backup level player on the field, one you cannot hide, one who is going to be asked to stop the Myles Garretts of the world on every down. We see pressure rate go up, sometimes way up. We see yards before contact go down, sometimes way down. In the case of Justin Herbert this year, we saw his scramble rate go up. In many cases, we see average depth of target go down. That's because the ball has to get out fast because the pressure is coming. There are so many ways that the level of talent at this position impacts the entire game. So if you have a chance to upgrade the position, or if you know your team needs a tackle, you might want to set aside one of those early round picks to get that done.
And now let's welcome to the round table, Lindsay Rhodes of Sumer Sports.
Hello. I'm excited to talk about some offensive line stuff with you guys.
Are we?
Particularly, I feel like, based on what we just saw, we're coming off a season where I feel like that was sort of top of mind in a lot of ways, particularly for the aforementioned or alluded to Chargers, who lost 2 really good offensive tackles. And then at the end of the year, people are talking about how they're falling apart and Justin Herbert didn't play well. And I was losing my mind because I understood what was happening on the line. How much does that happen to you when you know that a really good offensive tackle in particular has left the building and you know what that does to everybody up front?
Hell, absolutely. And it's a dependability factor. I went back and thought about this. You look at the Eagles last year with Saquon Barkley and you thought, man, this is magical. You fast forward to this year and you think about, they lose some players to injury, not the same kind of year, and how invaluable that is. So not only drafting the top guys, but being really good at drafting guys at the right values, whether they're going to be a backup for you or a starter. And like we've talked about in a lot of positions, when you're shopping hungry for a tackle, you got to really be smart about how you evaluate them, from who they are to what they are, and then the talent level that they have.
And the other thing is, it really does impact everything you do offensively.
Yeah.
It's, we focus on the pass game. Oh, Justin Herbert didn't play well, but your point with the Eagles, I had the same notes down as I was watching that. A year ago, they were the best run team in the NFL by far. Saquon Barkley didn't get touched for 3 or 4 yards beyond. Now, this year, I think he got hit behind the line of scrimmage 47% of the time. Why? Lane Johnson was out. Their 3 interior guys had injuries, and it just magnified throughout both run and pass. So I think what also hit me on that was, 15 quality tackles?
Yeah.
So once you
really good.
Once you lose a tackle, let alone 2 like the Chargers, now you're just getting a guy that's probably been in the league for a few years and just hanging in there. It's hard to run your offense through that.
And so, in this particular case, Joe Ortiz, if you're the general manager of that team, literally what can you do? Because it's not, your roster building strategy was right. You have the guys. You're not, do you go draft more tackles just in case this happens again? And then your allocation of resources that are invested just into one position that hopefully those guys aren't even playing because you've got Alton Slater on the field. I don't know how you fix
Linz,
that.
I think the goal for most GMs is that you have at least 1 quality swing tackle. Okay, 1. Where you can plug and play him on either side. And as long as the other guy stays healthy, you're still going to be a somewhat respectable offensive unit. You can still execute the way you're supposed to, and they're not going to have to change a lot of the game plan. Have to change a little bit when you got Myles Garrett on the other side from your swing tackle, but I think the goal is to have 1 guy can swing both sides as a pretty good player. But when you start talking about 2 of them, you've basically got no shot, and they're going up every week against all-world Twitch defensive ends. Every team's got them, and then you say, well, I want to run the ball, and the defenses aren't dumb. They know what you're trying to do, and they're just going to hunker down in the box with the extra safety or whatever. Say, now what? You can't pass protect. I got 8 in the box. I'm oversimplifying, but what do you want to do now? So the Chargers didn't have a chance this year, from my opinion. I thought they coached really well and played really, really well beyond that. They just didn't have a chance.
We see a lot of tackles go early, but when do you know a guard or center is worth taking in the first round?
So one of the old things for GMs is kind of like, you don't take a center in the first few rounds unless he's a starting center, because he probably can't play either guard. And you're not drafting a one position backup, because you can only carry 8 or 9 on game day, right? So in your mind, what you're trying to think is, when we go from 53 to 48 on game day, I've got 5 starters. I got to have a swing guy, either somebody that swings from tackle to tackle or guard to tackle. But I got to have 3 guys that can step in and play, and they all have to be multi-position guys. So that just comes into play, especially as the draft moves on.
I'm reminded too of Quenton Nelson, and he was coming out of Notre Dame. So you ask yourself, well, how can he go? I think it was the middle of the first round. And what you found out, especially having gone there and done him, was the DNA on him was rare. I mean rare. So what they were not only getting, his blue trait wasn't athletic ability. His blue trait was just sheer physicality, but more important was the leadership that he brought to a very young O-line room in Indianapolis, that they valued enough to take him in the first round. Been a Pro Bowl player ever since, so you can dissect his feet or athletic ability, but I just think the characteristics and the personality, they were like, as you said, plug and play, no-brainer, guard only, no versatility, but he doesn't have to have it because he brings that much of an element to it.
One of the things that I've noticed the last few years at the Senior Bowl in particular is where this pops to me, is that particularly in this age of the transfer portal and everybody's transferring up, and by the end, a lot of the guys that are the top prospects in the NFL all go to major schools, right? But that's not necessarily true for offensive linemen. You've got guys coming out of North Dakota State. You have some smaller school guys coming out at this specific position. Yeah. And I'm wondering why you think this position is one where those guys are clearly good enough to go in the first round. Sometimes Zabel, first rounder, North Dakota State. Why aren't they leaving to move up?
There's so many of those
Cody
guys.
Mauch.
Cody Mauch, Quinn Meinerz, lumberjack out in the woods with his shirt off.
There's always one of those. And
right?
It's always a small school with their belly out at the Senior Bowl.
I mean, you know, they had Tristan Wirfs jumping out of a pool, flat-footed, lower body strength and verticality. I think there's a loyalty inherent amongst these guys that breeds that, like, they're 5. Those 5 are 1. Okay, and that's not, your wideouts aren't that way, your tight ends aren't that way, your running back, your D-backs, whatever. Like, 5 is 1, is the way the O-line look at themselves. And if you say, hey, I'm Zabel and I'm out of here, I'm going to Bama, see ya. Like, most of the time you don't do that to your boys.
Right.
Like, and am I wrong there?
No, you're not wrong. And so I referenced Quenton Nelson. So Quenton Nelson actually sat down with the scout and and he and Mike McGlinchey said, hey, should we leave? Should we come out? What would we do? What would we be? We said 3rd and 4th rounders. You're a little bit off balance and clumsy, and Mike doesn't have an anchor. So rarely in that day and age, they stayed for their senior years at Notre Dame. In this NIL day, they're probably long gone. You can make a couple $1 million at another school, well, Isaiah World. Nevada, Reno, Oregon. You know, we talked about Proctor. He was gone for a minute, then not gone for a minute. Was it money? Was it loyalty? Was it?
I think we're going to see more of it, though, Lynn, just because the volume of money is just too great to even overwhelm the brotherhood. But at the end of the day, these dudes are different, man, and I love them.
And I think you used to be the developmental player was your 5th, 6th, 7th round guy. But if I leave Reno because I was going to be that kind of guy and I can go to Auburn or I can go to Ohio State and make the kind of money that I'm going to make and have a chance to improve my stature in the NFL eyes, you got to go do it. So that's the difference, I think, now, too. It's just from a business standpoint.
And you keep bringing things up that trigger me, and I apologize. Because I put the GM hat on, and I go, like, so you're doing this, and I'm going, one of the things I learned as a GM is that when you get into that 6th and 7th round of the draft, there aren't many tackles left that you think can make your 53. Okay, so you're trying to grab a couple offensive linemen, because then what happens, you get in the frenzy of undrafted free agency and you're throwing money at kids that just didn't get drafted, and you're just trying to get enough quality linemen into your building, right? I mean, and it's hard. So what a lot of teams do is they'll take offensive linemen in that 7th round, and it depletes the supply even more. And the caveat is if you take one on the 7th and trying to slide him through to your practice squad, as I learned, I took a center from Pitt named Jimmy Morrissey, who I loved, quick, tough, undersized kid, and of course, got him through the practice squad halfway through the season. Houston poached him. You know, you can't control that on the practice. So if you're going to take a lineman late in the draft, you better make sure he's going to be on your 53.
Love the discussion. Lindsay, what do you have for us?
Well, he already posed the question about what Sam might have to add about 40 times for offensive linemen. We've talked about some of the ways that you guys will evaluate them from a scouting standpoint, and we've talked a lot about the combine just at other positions. How valuable is the combine for offensive linemen, and which drills really tell this story? Here's today's Stats in the Shadows.
If you were to ask players and coaches, they'd tell you the biggest difference between college and the pros is the quality of offensive line play. So projecting offensive linemen to the next level is immensely important. And the best offensive linemen excel at rumbling. So, should we actually take more stock in the combine athletic drills? Research indicates an interesting conundrum. The combine, which is typically substantially overvalued for other position groups, actually seems to be undervalued with respect to offensive linemen. To calculate this, we look at correlations. A correlation of 1 indicates a perfect positive relationship between two things. 0 indicates no value in the relationship at all. For offensive linemen, several drills, the short shuttle for interior and the 40 and the 3 cone for tackles, are at or above a 0.25. Still a weak correlation, but of interest in the complex world of college pro projection. Despite that, it seems that teams are actually undervaluing this relationship. The correlation between draft position and those key drills is at around 0.15. My thesis? Coach Mike Tomlin once said that a lot of what goes into draft evals is actually coaching. At the offensive line positions, where scheme and technique are immensely specific, I think there's no better example. As a result, an offensive lineman's athletic pedigree, as compared to only his performance within his college system, may just be the key to access his ability to rumble at the next level.
Joel, I know we're talking about offensive linemen, but yesterday in the back, we were talking about Randy Moss and his 40 and about how that separated him from the rest of the field.
When he ran in the...
Upstairs, in an indoor facility.
On a snow day at Marshall.
On a snow day at Marshall, and ran out the fire door. At 6'5" or 6" or whatever he was, and it was 4.39 when you looked at your watch as he went by, and you almost felt him run past you, and you were like, if I didn't like him before, I love him now. Yeah. Really love him now. He was big and fat.
I had a Cowboy scout come to BC to work out me and Tim Sherwin, who was tight end, went in the 4th round of Baltimore Colts at the time. And he was a former coach, not really as much a scout as a lot of the guys. And he had a briefcase. And so he wanted to measure 40 in our indoor facility, right? So he basically put his briefcase down at the start and turned his back and walked away to measure 40 yards. So after he got about 15, 20 yards away, Timmy is hitting me going, watch this. And he's kicking the briefcase towards the scout. And I'm going, no, Tim, no. Really? And so I think we ran 37 yards, 30. I ran my career best. He ran his career best. And the scout's like, wow, I don't have times on either of you like this. I'm like, yeah, no kidding.
And that modern day scouting, that doesn't happen.
No.
Because they triple check.
Yes.
And they tape it and
everything.
It's going to be.
Well, speaking of which,
schools, not just the combine.
The pro days that I've been to, thank God you guys are talking to me now, because when I've gone to pro days as a reporter, these scouts won't even share the 40 time. They all huddle up.
Oh, yeah.
And I got to pull some. I'm trying to what do you run? And they're like,
no, here's the best though.
Get it from the school. This is our proprietary information for the Giants.
I'm going to go to school. Wait a minute, I'm going to go to USC.
Okay.
Pete Carroll's the head coach, and he is the master showman, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Mauigoa runs, and he was not a fast guy, right? And he finishes the 40, and we're all looking at each other, all the scouts, and like 4.78, 4.82, 4.83. Everybody's in that range. And then you hear over the loudspeaker, booming, Ray Mauigoa with a new record at USC, 4.51. And Pete would have hundreds of recruits there, and they're going crazy. People are yelling and screaming. Mauigoa thinks he ran 4.51, and we're just giggling, like, whatever.
Yeah.
Pete, whatever you want.
No, it's true.
Anyway, I don't know what that had to do with offensive linemen, but I apologize.
Nothing at all, but it was a great story.
Absolutely.
I love that stuff.
I love it. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to our team at Sumer Sports. Thank you, Joe Thomas. And remember, draft night is loud, but evaluations are quiet. And we live in the quiet. Until next time.